Hey, friends, we need a new phrase that means thinking out of the box. What do you got?
In the
Thinking
box.
under the box.
I don't know.
Sky
Fox.
thinking.
Okay. Yeah, we'll innovate on something with authors Rich Braden and Tessa Forshaw on this episode of the Learning Geeks podcast, starting now. Do you like that? There's a little kind of a Smartless cold open, a little more interactive.
Oh, I like it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
Jake can edit out some of the pauses.
I'm still trying to come up with an idea. I should
I will
have written
probably-
a book on innovation.
I'll probably just cut out my crap that I try to say. So just so I look better.
Yeah, Jake will just edit it out. So
He always does that. He leaves my crap in but takes his out.
I know. He loves to throw us under the bus in that way.
Power of editing.
It is. It is.
So
I sound fantastic. Well, not really, but
it's
I don't.
great.
But
Well, let's do this. First off, let's greet our old friend Tessa and our new friend Rich. Happy to have you folks on the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Great to be
Yeah.
here. Thank you.
Super happy. We were talking a little bit about Star Wars in the green room, and I bet you didn't know this, Jake, but I have a podcast about Star Wars.
I didn't know. Can you say it again?
Is it a
Yeah,
long
it's
or a
called
short one?
It's short. It's called Short for a Stormtrooper. But
It's
this
like
is the
the
thing.
first
This is the
movie.
thing. This is the thing I want to talk about really quick. Is this morning on the day that we record this, we finally got our glimpse at Stern Pinball's latest pinball machine, which is Star Wars: Fall of the Empire. And you guys, I am so jazzed. I might be buying this.
Oh boy.
It might be right here.
And Bob, I want to remind you that you said when you no longer had room for pinball machines, you were going to send one my direction.
That's what I was thinking. I thought the whole point of
did,
you
and
clearing
then
out
I
those
did.
pinballs was to get.
But then you
That's
sold
some
them. Yeah.
But then I sold it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The guy needed the whole set. I'm sorry, Dave. I let you down, Dana, and we'll find a way to get you hooked up with pinball. But yeah, I mean, I've been playing
This
a
is
lot
the
more
way.
pinball lately.
This is the way.
There you go. Yeah. So anyway, this is really cool. I bet by the time that this actually gets edited and put out into the wild, I might actually have the pinball machine back here. We'll see.
This one might
see.
be faster. I'm trying to get that's.
Okay. All right.
I say that
good.
every year, but this one is the next one in line, so it should be fast.
Yeah. Well, the game might come quick. It's all just a matter of, do I trust that I'm actually going to get a bonus this year that I will use to pay it? I don't want to do the Clark Griswold, buy the pool before I get the bonus, and then it's Jelly of the Month Club. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, we are delighted to have Tessa and Rich here, and you have a brand new book. It's like literally hot off the press, because it's called Innovation-ish. I think that's where I got the extra sh in there. And maybe let's take a couple of seconds and have you all introduce yourself, and then give us the pitch on Innovation-ish, and then we'll dive in.
Sounds great. Well, I am by training a software engineer. That's where I started in my career. I came out to Silicon Valley from Indiana to stake my claim, and did that for a while before I sort of transitioned in more of the business side and doing marketing. But then I found improv as a side gig. And for about a dozen years, I taught and performed in San Francisco doing improv. And that's what really pulled me into doing training and bringing the improv principles into the corporate work environment, applied improvisation, and got me started teaching at Stanford, where Tessa and I met, both in the business school and the design school, around creativity and innovation. And since then, I've had a foot in that world, and then doing consulting, bringing that out into the rest of the world, helping others to create innovations.
And as
Amazing.
Rich said, we met at Stanford when I was also teaching there, and since moved to Harvard. I'm a scholar at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and I study all things sort of cognition related to learning, working, and creating. And in that job, have the delightful opportunity of hanging out with you guys sometimes, which is the best part, without a doubt.
It is pretty fun. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. It is.
Well, we're super happy. We're super happy to have you back on, and super excited about this book, Rich. I love that, and I know, like, from my personal experience as being a learning guy who was, well, I mean, I was a theater kid growing up. How many stand-up learning pros are washed-up theater kids? Like,
Right.
Lots.
there's a big Venn diagram intersection there. Shout out to Marie Pettingill, my drama coach, who also is in the corporate learning field. But I started doing improv into my corporate learning career, kind of in, like 5 or 6 years in. And I learned so many of the teachings from improv I could apply to being innovative. So, the same type of thing that you're talking about. That's great. And I
Absolutely.
love hearing, your take on that.
Yeah, there are so many good lessons in there about having empathy, about taking care of others and building on other ideas. In fact, when I showed up at the D school at Stanford, I had my whole improv toolkit and I brought that along and found out that they weren't improv activities, they were design activities. And there were just such overlap in the two things that it felt really comfortable. It felt really natural to step into that because improv is a really pure form of creativity where it's kind of boundless and you can create and invent anything, but you need those same fundamental skills in any collaboration where you're trying to come up with creative solutions of working together and building on other people's ideas.
All right, I'm going to pivot a little bit to the book here. So in the green room, we're talking, Bob, this is when you're away, phone calls and everything else. But in the green room, we're talking about the book, just getting started. And Dana, myself, and Bob are, I mean, really, it was fresh off the press. I think we just got, at least I got my copy a couple days ago, and same with the others. But one of the things I really liked about the book itself, and again, I think it's why you say innovation-ish, I think it hit me right away, within the first chapter, pretty much talking about those like Steve Jobs and those Eureka moments, and basically saying that it's not that. And I think that throughout my entire life, so many innovation, creativity books tend to be around those kind of people. And I find I get more value and learn way more about kind of putting it down to the ground level. And so that's one thing I appreciate. But was that kind of really one of your anchors of going into this book, and maybe even from teaching this class, is that one of the common struggles that people would often go through?
Yeah, I think Rich and I bonded at first when we were teaching over this sort of noticing that students didn't think they were creative. And we were always like, are you kidding me? Like, you're all incredible. And especially in places like, Stanford D School, you might be like, sure. But we've also taught this on supply chain floors in the middle of the country with, people who day job involves picking and stacking in a freezer, right? Like, all of these people we think are incredible and creative humans, and the amount of folks that don't see themselves that way because they believe in this sort of mythology of it's Steve Jobs, it's him by himself, this illustrious genius, notion is kind of it's just wild. But it was so sad, and I think we bonded over wanting students to see themselves how we saw them, as creative, agentive, and empowered humans who could really go about changing the world around them in big and small ways that were innovative and meaningful.
One of the things that I really like about the book is you survey, it sounds like about 80 different models. Yeah. And anytime I come across somebody who's put that much effort into understanding a broad range of models and then going through the synthesis process, it usually ends up being a spectacular result. And the one thing that comes to mind is several years ago, I came across a paper by Dave Merrill called First Principles of Instruction. Mm-hmm. And Dave had gone through 125 different instructional design models, and he did that type of a synthesis. And I thought, wow, this is great, because he's not saying there's one way. He's saying these are the things that kind of percolated up as I looked across the spectrum. So maybe one of the two you want to comment on your process or how you got to that point.
Yeah, that's just exactly it. We looked across all of them. And at first, students would bring a few in and they'd ask us about them. What about this? I've used this in a company before. And we'd look at them and see, oh, well, these actually line up pretty well with what we're already saying. And that got to be a few more. And then we started sending them out to find new ones and say, bring them in. And after a certain point, we decided we needed to go through and code and really see, are they all really the same? And I think the two conclusions that we came up with is they're all right and they're all wrong in the same ways. So the things that they're right about is there are lots of good tools and techniques that show up in all of them, and each individual one is great. It works so well. People have developed it. There's a few variations. Those are great things to hang on to. What doesn't work so well is most of them are driven by those, what we call moves, the actions you take. Maybe it's an empathy map or a user journey map, or there's lots of different tools out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then they sequence them together. And it's that process that you're supposed to follow that is proprietary and named in particular ways and reshuffled from somebody else's to make it distinct. And they're trying to make a distinction when one doesn't exist. And the purpose of all of those moves is really to shift what mindset you're going into the work with. And that's at the core of it is when we went from process to a mindset based approach.
Just to build on that, I think we went into it, I think, initially expecting a meta process. If I'm like, I don't, I think that's kind of was one of the expectations that we had, was like, oh, we'll distill like the first principles of these processes in some way. But about, I think maybe 10 or so in, we had a conversation around, I think what they're actually trying to do, not in the picture, not in the like words in the framework, but in the narrative around them, when you know, read the book or you read the paper, what they're actually trying to do was to get somebody to take a perspective or have a cognitive framework by which they viewed the world at different moments. And so that really made us think about you know, a beautifully under thought, under discussed part of cognitive psychology, which is mindsets. I think we often only talk about growth mindset, which is such an important mindset. I love growth mindset, but it's not the only mindset out there. You can have a mindset about just about anything, genuinely, and we ultimately figured out that these 80 processes were all saying to their users in their own way, hey, this is the mindset or perspective by which I need you to engage with the world. So we just sort of elevated that and named it.
Well, and what I like about that, Tess, about the mindsets, the six that you introduce, is that it also introduces lots of flexibility in the way you go about that. It doesn't lock you in. I remember back in the 1980s when I first started at Arthur Anderson and Company, we did the tax audit and consulting stuff. I walked into a manager's office, and I was new in the company. I walked to manager's office, and there was a creativity methodology, and I laughed because I thought, well, if you're creative, you're not stuck to a box, right? I learned that eventually, you know, it's helpful to have some of that stuff, but it was like 50 boxes on this creativity methodology. I could be creative without any boxes.
That was
So
always
I like the flexibility.
Yeah.
And I agree, Dan, to kind of piggyback real fast. Younger in my career, I actually hated creating templates and using templates because I felt like it was restricting my ability to design creativity. Like, again, I understand the purpose of them. Like, they're great, sometimes a great scaffolding mechanism for someone getting started. But at the same time, like, someone always like, Jake, can you put together like a template based off of what you did? I'm like, no, I don't even, sometimes I don't even know what I did. I just like, it's how I got there, whatever. But I felt restricted from it.
Yeah, because the template becomes the end result of the journey you took to get there.
Yeah.
Right. So all the cognitive processes,
which was specific to that problem too. That's
right.
Why my argument was, it's like that happened because there were some certain constraints that led to me being creative in those moments that related to the problem.
Yeah.
I often say it's like, imagine. So I would say, Bob, I have the best map in the world of New York City. It is a fantastic map. You would love it. You should take it on your holiday. It'll be so helpful to you. And so you go, yeah, okay, Tessa, I'll take your map. That sounds good. And you go on your holiday and you're standing in the middle of a city and you open it up and you're like, oh, this doesn't work. But Tessa said this map will work and it's the best map. Oh, the maps of New York and I'm in Bangkok. Like, of course the map doesn't work.
Doesn't work, right?
And today, even if you have the map of New York City and you're standing in New York City, if the map is 5 years old, or for that matter, 2 days old, the map's probably outdated. And so what Rich and I really tried to surface with this book is this idea of you don't need a better map. You need to be able to navigate. And so we've sort of centered the book on this idea of what does it mean if you have a compass instead of if you have a map.
Yeah. The way you bend the spoon is to realize there is no spoon.
That's right.
To bring it back to the Matrix.
That's the second reference of that today. Not that specific quote, Bob, but to the Matrix. I was listening to a podcast that was.
Did you watch it recently?
No, it was just a 5-minute conversation of like a sports podcast I was listening to when I was working in the yard today. I don't know. It just means I have to watch it. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, you have to watch it. That's
careful.
amazing. I was also laughing because I was thinking, it didn't help that Carol Dweck called her book about growth mindset. Yeah, it does kind of paint the picture that there is only one. And as much as that's a good one.
At least it wasn't the mindset.
True. Well, that's true. Capital the only way.
Right.
But, it is very hard then because, now we're all talking about the place where we work and get our bread and butter and all that kind of stuff, is it makes it hard to run an innovation organization, especially within a business structure that is pretty command and control and plan and, anticipate and work towards a definitive work plan.
Produce results.
Yeah, that does make it challenging. So we need that mindset shift, not just for those of us who are innovators, but for those of us around us to really make it sing.
Yeah, and actually I had one question that I did write down in my notes when I was reading that led to that, or very similar. But when I was reading about convergent and divergent thinking, and in an organization or any type of, let's say your manager or your leader is impatient with letting someone be in the divergent stage. Again, I'm sure you guys have experienced this even in teaching. But like, what's your recommendation on that? Because I know people struggle with that, and they're not given the patience to allow that to happen.
That's a good question. I think a couple things come to mind for me. One, you don't always have to ask for permission to diverge. And if the first thing you do is quickly go to the side, diverge, and come back with 3 or 4 different options, then go into a moment of convergence, maybe that is a piece of the answer.
The stealth innovation.
That's right, stealth innovation. A cloaking device of innovation, as it were. The other thing is, I think what you're pointing at is that this is cultural. And I thought you could have stopped when you said, but that makes it hard to do innovation when you're in a command and control organization. Full stop. Yes, it does.
Right.
You need a collaborative organization with people that are given agency, which is not to say that the organizations you're from do not do that. There are pockets and there are different subcultures between groups and divisions and countries and regions. So I think finding your people is a piece of it. And if you are in a leadership role, trying to create a safe bubble for people to do that, I think is a good way on the path of trying to shift things. Because if you have success, nothing draws attention like success and sharing those stories. And how did you do that? And then you can start to share it a little bit.
Yeah, I'd add to that and say, one of the things about the sort of innovation-ish approach, I think that is helpful is that we talk about, you can do, if you do one thing one time, that's better than doing nothing. But just like going to the gym, like going once a month to the gym, like it's probably not going to do so much for you, but it's a little bit. But if you want to step it up and you go for a walk 3 times a week, like that's going to do a lot more for you. And so too, like if you engage with a few extra mindsets and a few extra moves. So we talk about this concept of like innovationishness, and so that can be a really helpful way to sort of think about onboarding into innovation. But we are still talking about working around a culture. And I think that is a problematic aspect, because if organizations want innovation, the fundamental truth of this is that you can't run an innovation project like a BAU project. And certainly you certainly can't ask them to tell you what the results will be, how much it will be, and when it will be ready, and what it is that they're funding, if you're at the very beginning starting like exploring the problem, and I think that that is a fundamental tension that is evident in a lot of workplaces right now.
Yeah.
What
Story
comes to
of my
mind?
career, Tessa.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I don't know if I'm experiencing joy right now that you identified it, or PTSD. It's probably a little bit of both. But yeah.
Bob, I'm thinking of the boss who comes and says, "I want innovation, and this is the way I want it."
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Does that ever happen?
It happened to me again this week.
Did it?
I want the most creative, innovative thing that nobody has ever done before. Now tell me exactly how much it's going to cost, what it's going to look like, and give me 5 other stories of where it's been done before to prove that I don't have to take any risk in doing this.
I think that kind of pressure also, for the person asking, I often like to think is suffering from innovation hesitation, which is a thing we talk about in the beginning of the book. That is largely about this mythology that we talked about, this I'm not seeing themselves not as being creative, which we also talked about. But the third component is something we call cognitive caution, and that is the idea that your mind is engaging in certain processes, like wanting to belong as part of a group, not wanting to take risks because the potential of the risk could be really consequential, etc. Those cognitive processes that make us cautious, they also have purpose. Like, it's not a baby that looks at your face and mimics you so that they are more likely to be attached. There's a real foundational evolutionary need for like why we have those kinds of processes and why we do that, and why we avoid risk. Like, do we want to do something that could be super risky and we fall off the side of the tightrope and die? Like, no, we probably don't want to do that. These are good processes, let's keep them.
Right.
They just don't apply when we're talking about innovation. And yet people sometimes think they have this incorrect perspective that if they are having a what feels like a cognitive instead of an emotional reaction to something, then it must be rational. But what people don't realize is cognition and emotion aren't separate. Emotion is cognition, right? And so that reaction, that cognitive caution that feels like it's much more intellectual, is actually very much an amygdala driven emotional response. And people are misinterpreting it. And so what we need to do is learn to name it, say, yes, this is okay, this is helpful, everyone has it, don't get rid of it. And let's discuss if we think this is the right place. And maybe there are places at work, like in L&D, maybe in some places we probably want to consider risk, because we don't want to do something that fundamentally harms all of the people in the organization. And
Sure.
like, that would be great to not do that, right? Like, let's not throw them all on the latest new AI tool that isn't protected and have them leak all of the company secrets. Like, let's not do that. That would be great.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of places where we don't need that. So I think a big part of it is having that conversation and not being scared to name that, like, emotions exist at work.
Well, and the way I've been framing it up as you're talking, Tessa, is that some leaders want the benefits of innovation without the risk of innovation.
Right.
And I think what you're saying is you need to have a conversation about that. And then maybe there's a way that you can say, okay, let's take incremental risk through iteration or whatever it might be. and let's prove the benefit, and then we can grow to something bigger.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's about looking at the portfolio of needs and problems you're trying to solve and which ones are worthy of innovation to begin with and how much of it, as well as what's the risk profile for each one. Because just because you work in legal, finance, HR, doesn't mean that everything about your entire job is risky. There are some particular areas where there's more risk and you can't be careless and negligent with things. You have to be thoughtful. But there are a lot of places where internal processes that you can play around with those and there's not a lot of fallout and harm. So one is laying out the amount of risk, and the other is scaling the, as you just said, scaling the rollout with a lot of prototyping. Try with a very small test. And if that works and it proves out, then start to scale. And I think many times people just try to converge on the first idea, find the right, find a solution, and then try and roll that out really big so they can just be done and get it off their plate. And I think you're trading off speed for quality in a very traditional
Yeah.
sense, and it rarely works out well. And you're not going to get that innovation that you ultimately want. It actually will take longer because it takes 3 versions before you actually have learned enough of 3 major launches of a big program before you actually understand enough to really solve it.
What other specific takeaways for learning people do you think that they can get from your book?
I could talk about this question all day. One of the central things about the moment that we live in right now, we talked about, even if you have the map, it's outdated. I think we are living in a time when there's unprecedented change and uncertainty, but like it's not changing, so it's sort of becoming normal. And so we really need to think about, well, how do we make sure that people have the skills and ability to engage in creative problem solving in the workplace, because we need that when the map doesn't exist or the map doesn't apply or the map is old. When we're navigating off the map, can the people do that? And I think that's a really important question. And so one of the key takeaways from the book is that metacognition is an essential part of how you navigate off the map, how you do this. It's how you think about a situation and a problem and what mindset do I need to engage to move forward with it. It's about how do you choose what kind of move I want to make, what strategy will help me achieve the goal I want. Am I bringing biases into my thinking and my reasoning and falling trap to a cognitive bias? Or is this helpful? Because in innovation and creative problem solving, there are so many cognitive biases, confirmation bias, sunk cost fallacy, like all of these things. It's nearly like a super spreader event of cognitive biases is creative problem solving. I suppose what I'm trying to say is something I would love learning professionals to take away from this is the value of teaching and encouraging metacognition in their workplaces and supporting their employees in big ways and in small. And I mean, by small, I mean it could just be like little practices in the existing programs or big ways, standing up new things. But how do we start to really build and train that practice of being metacognitive?
So in the book, you talk about the how young kids often have, natural creativity, and we kind of through the school systems beat it out of them. By the time they get into the corporate world, then it's really whooped out of them. So, I mean, what are ways and techniques we can kind of help instill that creativity back into them? I mean, in part, that's what your book's about. But any specific ideas of how can we get people back to that, childlike,
Childlike.
childlike,
Yeah.
I could help
creativity.
you with childish.
Yeah. Childish happens plenty
I
often.
got left that going on.
Yeah. I think you can create it in small moments by changing the way you structure collaboration and bringing people together. Intentionally set the mindset at the beginning and name it and say, here's what we're going to do in this place. And then when those other mindsets that are helpful in other contexts start to come in, you can just gently remind them, hey, we're in a ideas mindset. We're going to get to that mindset that you were just saying. Don't worry about it. We'll just put it on pause. So I think being really intentional with the directions that you give to create that safe place for it. I think anytime you can get play involved in and reawaken those things to change the mood. There's so much status and structure that we are used to. Like, if you walk into a theater, you sit down, I should sit, be respectful, and applaud or laugh at the right times. It sets the tone. You walk into a conference room, you should sit and either open your laptop or not, depending on the room, and pay attention to one person talking. If you slide the conference room table to the side, move the chairs out of the way, get out Post-its and pens, you've already changed how things are going to go in that room. Just hand things out to people. They're in their hands. They will just start to use them. So I think a lot of it is about setting the intention at the beginning,
Love it.
every time.
Yeah, love it. So there are all kinds of things you can do just with the environment.
Absolutely.
I mean, you could even remove the boardroom table and put beanbag chairs in there. I mean, those types of things too.
Even better.
Yeah. Yeah. But you guys also say in the book, like, that doesn't suffice, right? Like, just creating the environment doesn't make it happen. Or, I mean, do you remember, Dana, like 20 years ago when we were like, oh, if we just remove the drop panels from the ceilings and try to make us look more like IDEO, that we would be more creative. That lasted about a day. And then we're like,
where are those panels? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the maintenance crew didn't care too much for that.
They were not happy.
They were not happy.
That's true.
Well, it is kind of interesting because one of the techniques that I use for projects from a lab standpoint, usually I say within the first 2 weeks, you should be doing a lot of divergent thinking, pretty much doing exploration. First 1 to 2 weeks, because more often than not, it's usually a question that we're trying to explore solving or experimenting with. And that is a new thing for a lot of people that work with me. Most of the time, they're used to getting something that's very pretty much structured. They have clear guidelines and they know where to go because they've either more than likely done it before. But usually this question is something that's new, it's different. So one of the tactics that I do is, like I say, hey, the first 2 weeks you're going to do a lot of divergent thinking. You just go off, explore. But by that point, though, we need to start to come in. So I give a little bit of scaffolding, but at the end of the day, I wasn't necessarily thinking it, Rich, in the way that you were explaining it it is almost changing the environment because I don't have a physical environment. Everything in mine is all remote, but I am changing the environment in which they are very much used to. So it's actually now it's like coming back to me like, ooh, okay, I didn't really think of that in that way, but. It does make me think that what are other mechanisms that I can do to help change the, again, not physical environment, but make them notice that this is different from what they're typically used to and make it pretty clear.
Yeah. We see that come up in our classes a lot, where it takes a few hours of working with students before they realize our class is very different. There are no right answers. There are lots of right answers in our class. You can't just follow along, take the notes, and take a quiz because the entire process is a delve into learning about the problem, and we care more about how you're getting there and what you're struggling with than we do any end result. And so they have to relearn a different way of approaching the class than what their traditional approach is. And that sounds like what you were doing is the first 2 weeks, we're setting the tone at the beginning. This operates differently. Go off and explore as your first note. Then that endorses them to continue to do that as they go throughout the project.
Mm-hmm. And for those listeners, you're wondering, why the heck do you let them go for 2 weeks? It sounds like a long time. Anybody that works with me only works for 8 hours a week. So it's not a full-time project. I just want to make it clear. Because as I said that, I'm like, that sounds like a long time.
I didn't think that's a long time. I was like, great.
I don't either.
Yeah. And no judgment, man.
I don't know. But in my mind, I'm like, man, that might sound like a long time.
Actually, now I'm judging you. What, 16 hours? That's all you give them to explore?
I think
Man, Jake.
It's as much. They may have a little. It just depends on scheduling. But yes, I don't have anybody full
Cracking
time.
the whip over at McKinsey.
I think To your point though, Rob, like one of the biggest things teaching this is about creating the conditions for which it can occur, which
Mhm.
means that class looks quite different to a lot of other classes. We use a pedagogical practice that is the shorthand of its name came out of NASA, but essentially is explore before explain. And the process of it is that we have the students bring in what they know, engage with creative problem solving first. So we give them a problem, we tell them, okay, we're in teams, like let's start solving the problem. They start solving the problem, they bring in approaches, they, spend a few hours with it. We check in, we see how it's going, we keep going, and then we get to a point where we go, okay, now we're going to try this. And then we try something and we'll be like, oh, what happened? And often students will be like, well, before we had 4 ideas on the board and now we have like 70. And we'll be like, yeah, why do you think that is? And they'll come up with their reasons. And then at that point, we'll start to name what happened. And the reason that we do that is a few things. One, we like to make it tricky because learning is effortful. But two, because ambiguity exists in design and in the real world. And so we also have that in our classroom. Rich and I aren't ambiguous about what's going to happen. We are very tightly structured and scaffolded, and like the level of detail in our TikTok is like intense, but the students don't know all of that.
Yeah.
But the primary reason that we do it is because we want them to bring forward what they already know about creative problem solving, the tools that they use. We want them to have to actively engage with a problem and the concept of problem solving, and then to have all of that in their working memory so that when we talk about some of these subtle shifts and adjustments of practices, they're embedding that with their existing knowledge. And so that the next time they go to solve a problem and they bring forward that very well-worn, thing, mental model that they usually grab, this like new piece hopefully will come forward with it. So that's sort of one of our primary strategies, is to help people make sense of it. As I was doing some research recently into this pedagogical approach a little bit more, I was struck by how explore before explain is also an approach often used to improve the level of transcendent thinking that students engage with. So transcendent thinking being thinking about how the thing that they're doing connects to bigger concepts, is related to in their lives and their emotions and their experiences, and not just like memorizing the mathematical formula or Pythagoras, but instead like not being like, why am I learning this? They want to, they're like, I need to learn this because it is an essential part of connecting the thing that I'm doing. And I realized that I think that's actually one of the things that we are trying to do, is to help them get to a point where the reason they're learning the thing makes so much sense because they've just now got 80 ideas instead of 4. And so they're like, of course I needed to know that. And now I know why I remember it. And that helps it be more embedded and more relevant for them.
Well, listen, as we start getting ready to prepare the cabin for landing here, I think I can safely say amongst the 3 learning geeks, we unabashedly recommend the book. I know, Tessa, when I heard the title of it, I was like, she has me at hello with that. That sounds amazing. I'm still in the middle of reading it. Jake, I know you're still in the middle of reading it because we literally just got it. Dana, are you finished yet?
Nope. But I was telling him in the green room before you joined that this is a book I wish I had 10 years ago. I mean, it's awesome. It's so relevant, and it's such a good framework for thinking about innovation.
Yeah, same.
So, yeah.
Same.
Thumbs up,
Love it. I also want to touch on, are you guys still offering workshops? Like, what are the other things that you guys do around innovation and innovation-ish?
And how can our
exactly, because I think
a
lot of our listeners are going to want to get more of this.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the home base is www.innovationish.com, with or without the dash, it'll both work.
Great.
And that leads
nice.
to our Substack and to email. We have a few packages up there, but we do talks, we do learning sessions, we do accelerators to help companies actually move the needle. So we provide consulting and advising to help co-lead a team and to build capacity and capability.
And you do
Great.
podcasts.
And we do
We
lots
do.
of podcasts.
Yay! We're so
And
excited.
We're
Rich
happy about
does
that.
musical theater improv too, so let's just throw that in there.
Not anymore. Not
Oh
anymore.
man, yeah, but pretty soon he's going to opine about Star Wars, so we'll talk about that later.
Let's
Thanks
do
you
it.
guys for being on here.
Yeah, thank you.
Tessa, it's so great to
This is
see you
awesome.
again. Rich, so great to
too.
meet you.
Great to meet you
Best
too.
of luck with the book launch. Super excited. Again, we can't recommend it enough. You can find it on Amazon or
It's in a lot of places. I know
It's
it's,
in a
in
lot of
Barnes and Noble,
places.
Target,
Everywhere
many
books are
different places.
sold.
Yes.
Yeah.
you won't have any trouble finding it. So
It's in the floor of some post office somewhere because mine fell out of the envelope as it was being shipped.
Yeah, for
Crazy
those who don't know,
story.
Dana's book pretty much, I'm confident, got stolen out of the mail.
Yeah, this is the package it came in for those
Oh
who are
my
watching a
goodness.
video, and it's there.
It's empty.
It's a very thin book. It's like one page.
The book is
Yeah.
so hot that people are literally stealing it out of the mail now.
That's right.
Selling
It's
it
like I
on
like to say, you know what?
Marketplace.
If somebody steals my book on ethics, like out of my locked car or something, they probably need it more than I do. So I'm okay with that.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay. Thanks again for being here, Jake and Dana. Thanks as always.
Great.
Listeners,
Yep.
thank you as always for tuning in. And make sure you join us on the next episode of Learning Geeks podcast, which will come along very shortly. We'll see you soon. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.